Hey everyone! So, today we're going to discuss another room on TryHackMe. It's called IDOR, and today we're going to learn how to find and exploit IDOR vulnerabilities in a web application, giving access to the data we should not have access. What IDOR basically stands for? It stands for Insecure Direct Object Reference, and it is a type of access control vulnerability. This type of vulnerability can occur when a web server receives user-supplied input to retrieve objects, and too much trust has been placed on the input data and is not validated on the server side to confirm the requested object belongs to the user requesting it. So how I would like to explain this is basically, let's consider this IDOR room on TryHackMe is split up into 2 or 3 parts, and each part is assigned with a value 1, and here IDOR variable assigned with value 1. And let's say we got loaded up this page when we assigned the value 1, and it's basically the part 1 of this entire room, and there would be the part 2 as well. So now what can we do? Let's say that the part 2 only have access to certain number of users, or you can say it's under development. Then we can often, if change the value from IDOR is equals to 1, 1 is equals to 2, then it's quite possible when the IDOR vulnerability does exist, we might end up getting the part 2 of this room as well. Yes, so that's pretty much what IDOR is. And what does it stand for? It stands for Insecure Direct Object Reference. Yeah, and now there is the example to understand it as well, and I hope this one would be a pretty much good example. So let's imagine we have signed for an online service and you want to change your profile information. The link you click on goes to this particular URL you can see over here, and here we can see the online service.TryHackMe, and there is profile parameter which have given a value 1305, and only the user owner can view that. Curiosity gets better to you and try changing the user ID value to 1000, and you might notice that you would see the profile of that particular individual who have been assigned the value 1000. You have now disclosed an IDOR vulnerability, and it's basically the most easiest one in the entire open source web application security project. Top 10. OS. Top 10, basically. So, yeah, you have now discovered an IDOR vulnerability. Ideally, there should be a check on the website to confirm that the user information belongs to the user. Log requesting it. Using what you have learned above, click on the Site button and try retrieving a file. So, shopping, your order number is 1234. Check through the emails below and try identify URL that could be potentially vulnerable to IDOR. Oh, sorry. So, join our Discord. I think this one might be vulnerable to IDOR. Now you can change your order confirmation, which contains your details. So what I would do, try changing the URL below to view order 1000. So basically this number is given to us, and if we would just change that to 1,000 and try to generate the invoice, then we would have the flag. Finding IDORs in encoded IDs. When passing data from page to page either by post data, query strings, or cookies, web developers will often first take the raw data and encode it. Encoding ensures that the receiving web server will be able to understand the contents. Encoding changes printing data into ASCII string, commonly using the A to Z characters, capital A to Z, and 0 to 9 numbers, and is equals to correct for padding. The most common encoding technique on the web is base 64 encoding and usually be pretty easy to spot. You can use websites to decode the string, and you would often also see the double equals to at the end, which identify it as the base 64. And it is pretty much more common. So what is the common type of encoding by the website? It's B64. Finding IDORs in hashed IDs. So hashed IDs are a little bit more complicated to deal with than encoded ones, but they may follow a predictable patterns, such as being the hashed version of the integer value. For example, the ID number 1 to the would become this MD5 hash if MD5 hashing were in use, and then we can use crackstation.net, which basically has billions of hashes composed to its original form, and we can try using the crackstation.net to find an IDOR vulnerability as well. This is a common algorithm using 4 hashing IDs. It's MD5. Finding IDORs in unpredictable IDs. If the ID cannot be detected using the above method, an excellent method of IDOR detection is to create 2 accounts and swap the ID numbers between them. If you can view the user's content using their ID number while still being logged in with a different account, have found and valid IDOR validity. So let's say we got an account on this store to TryHackMe, and let's say that our account is, I guess, user here. So let's say we got one Joe, and we created the account for Joe, and then we created another account for the, let's say, Alice, and let's say we were to generate IDOR, and basically if we couldn't confirm whether or not the IDOR does exist or not, and we want to ensure, then we would create 2 accounts, one for Joe and one for Alice, and then he would observe the URL if we could get and we have the number for Joe and we are in Alice account, and if we could just change the value to invoice number from Alice original invoice number to Joe invoice number, then it's quite possible we would discover an IT error value of dates. And what is the minimum number of accounts you need to check? It's 2. Where are IDORs located? The vulnerable endpointing of targeting may not always be something in the address part. So it's quite possible it's not always in the address bar. It could be content your website loads in via this request, AJAX request, or something that you find referred in a JavaScript file. Sometimes endpoints could have unreferenced parameter that may have been of some use during development and got pushed to production. So it's quite possible that some development work is just pushed through the production phase. And for example, you may notice a call to users that details displaying your user information through your session. Then it's quite possible that you can just change the user ID. And if the user ID is one to read, then you can try to manually changing it until with discover what user was sensitive and does contain some sensitive information. So now we got task 7. It's practical idea or example. Begin by pressing the start machine. Once started, click the below link and open it in a new browser tab. So looks like we have to get our Kali for this. Firstly, you will need to log in. To do this, click on the customer section and create an account. Once logged in, click in your account tab. The Your Account section gives the ability to change your information such as username, email, address, and password. You will notice the username and email fields pre-filled with your information. You will start by investigating how this information gets preferred. If you open your browser developer tools, select the Network tab, and then refresh the page, you will see a call to an endpoint with the path, API, V1 customer ID, and user ID. This page returns in JSON format your user ID, username, and email address. We can see from the part that the user information shown is taken from the query's string ID parameter, and thus we can try changing this. Try for IDOR vulnerability, and let's try visiting this. So let's first create a Power account. So your account tab is this basically, and if we just inspect the network tab, try to reload. Okay, so we are seeing another API request over here and call to an endpoint with this path. And if we could just copy this entire API endpoint, we might end up discovering an IDOR validity. So, okay, so this AP endpoint basically gives our ID name, our username, and our email. So you can try testing this ID parameter for an IDOR validity by changing the ID to another user ID. Try selecting IDs with one entry, then answer the questions below. So let's try for ID 1. So what is the username for user? ID 1, it's Adam84. What is the email address for user ID 3? It's jedwardfakeemail.com. And yeah, with that, we completed our IDOR room. Hope you enjoyed it. Keep learning and always stay anonymous.